You're listening to the Vocabit Podcast, where I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself using my unique and research-backed story-based method. On this podcast, I'm sharing the best tips and tricks for a more enriched vocabulary and pain-free test day. Hello, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Vocabit Podcast. I'm Erica Abbott, a former English and history teacher, the author of the young adult novel Ahead of Her Time, and the founder of the vocabulary company Vocabit. So I am so excited about this podcast because since all of the school closures began, I have been really stepping back and looking at Vocabit from a bird's eye view and really just trying to determine how I can be of the most value to the most people. And something that I'm obviously a big believer in is just because we've conventionally always done something a certain way, that doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it from now into eternity. I obviously feel that way about how we improve our vocabulary. I have nothing against flashcards or study guides or Membean. They're all wonderful tools, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for different models like Vocabit. And over the past few weeks, I've been really challenging myself to apply that more innovative mindset to Vocabit as a whole. How can I be more innovative, not just with my teaching style, but with my company, how I get you the information, how I present it, etc. And time out for Queen of the Tangents over here. It's common to hear people say etc. instead of et cetera. And sometimes they even write it as ECT instead of ETC because of this. So it's really etc., but people say etc. And just want to kind of give you the backstory on that and how you can remember that it's etc. and not etc. I know it sounds really similar, but it goes back to the Latin et cetera, which means and the rest, et meaning and, cetera and the rest. If you've heard the phrase et tu Brute, which Julius Caesar supposedly said to Brutus when he was being assassinated, and you Brutus, et tu Brute, and you Brutus. Brutus was his adopted son and one of his assassins. It's that same et, that same and. So et cetera and the rest, et tu Brute, and you Brutus. And so it's et cetera, et cetera, not etc. like ex or ect. And so, yeah, it's spelled ETC, etc. So anyway, back to what I'm changing up about Vocabit. And this is actually kind of a good segue into it. So traditionally, our education system is set up to teach us through courses. And consequently, that's how Vocabit has been configured up until this point. I have a course called the Vocabit Masterclass, which helps students learn more than 500 high-frequency SAT words using my unique story-based method. But I'm no longer convinced that a course is the best way to teach you this material. If you're new here, the research indicates that most people need to encounter a new word 8 times in order to learn it. And my belief is that encountering those words in context through stories is the most painless and effective route because it mimics how your brain learned the majority of your native tongue. It's the same reason that if you want to learn a foreign language, immersion is almost universally recognized as the fastest and most effective tool. It gives you those repeated contextual encounters that your brain has been programmed to utilize when acquiring new vocabulary. And I've spoken about that part before, but I'm creating this method, the Vocabit method. Vocabit is totally unique. It's Vocabit. It's named after me, Erica Abbott. I'm pulling it together from disparate studies and my own experience learning different languages and teaching and studying. And something recently occurred to me as a huge pitfall in the current course-based system. We all know that it is entirely possible to learn something for a course, a quiz, a test, and then forget it 5 minutes later. I don't want that to happen with the words you learn from Vocabit. I am here to really help you, to prepare you for the SAT, and to genuinely make you a more erudite person. And one of my favorite teachers, Mr. P, for any Breck alums in the audience, demonstrated the fix for this so well. He would give us quizzes that he had given us earlier in the year. Just bring back a random quiz in November or December that we had taken in September, and then do it again a few months later, do it again a few months later. And he did this because he knew that it is entirely possible to learn something and forget something. It's called short-term memory. But if you pull that information back up enough times over a long enough period, your brain is going to get the message that hey, this is kind of important. Maybe I should transfer this to long-term memory. So the second time we'd take that quiz, it would honestly be like taking it from scratch again. You'd have to restudy everything. You saw how I got a really good score on this the first time, and I don't remember any of it 2 or 3 months later. It was like I had to start over again. But then the third and the fourth time that I took it, it was just still there in my brain. And 15 years later, I still remember his class, not just as one of the classes where I learned the most, but one of the classes where I retained the most. And there's a huge difference there. And I think that that second marker is one that we need to be paying more attention to. Not just how much are you learning, but how much are you retaining? What of the information that you're spending all this time on are you actually taking with you out into the world? I did this when I was a teacher. I would circle back to content from earlier in the year to make sure it actually went into students' long-term vocabulary. And I really want to be able to do the same thing with you guys at Vocabit. And I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but in order to make an impact on your life, I need to be a part of it for more than the length of an online course. I need to be able to chat with you guys over breakfast or wherever you listen to this podcast. There is so much information that I can convey to you incidentally and really quite painlessly, like even just that little etc. anecdote. Stuff like that doesn't happen in a planned set course. And then not only can I get you more information, but I can actually help you retain it because we have the luxury then of the length where I can circle back to things and actually get things into your long-term memory. It all goes back to what we were talking about before. The most effective way to learn a language or improve your own language is through immersion, not through courses. And all of that gets to today's big announcement, which is that I am totally overhauling Vocabit. I'm getting rid of the masterclass course and I'm transitioning to a membership model. And I am so excited about this because it means that I can really make an impact on your education in a way that just isn't possible with a lot of courses. By not putting an end date on your learning with me, you guys are welcome to stay here however long you want. I'll be your teacher forever if you want. It allows me to get so much more information into your long-term memory so that you don't just learn these new words and concepts, you actually have a really good chance of retaining them. So not only am I trying to change how we improve our vocabulary with my kind of immersion story-based methodology, I'm also trying to change how we retain it. And I know that I always want to know the price first thing when someone announces something like this. But before we dive into that, I just really quickly want to share what exactly you will get with a Vocabit membership. And I want to be really clear that this is what you're going to get for now, but Vocabit is going to continue to grow and expand, and there will be some changes, but any changes that happen will be to your benefit. You're only going to get more over time. The first thing that you'll get is access to what was formerly the Vocabit Masterclass. I'm just going to make it available as a vault of omnipresent resources for Vocabit members. It has etymology videos, mindset hacks, short stories, just great stuff that you can peruse whenever you have time and circle back to whenever you want. The next thing that you will get as a Vocabit member is the text accompaniment to the podcast twice a week. So far, when I've read you guys these stories, I've just posted the text to them at Vocabit for free because I know that a lot of people like to read along. But in the future, the text component of the podcast, if you want to read along to the stories, that is going to be for Vocabit members only. And it's going to be more than just a transcript. I also include the definitions of the words that I use at the bottom of each page so that while you're building up your 8 impressions, you can still enjoy the story really seamlessly without having to go, back and forth to a dictionary or something like that. So in addition to getting the text, you have the definitions at the bottom of each page. And one thing that's so great about having that visual accompaniment is most studies agree that the more senses you incorporate into whatever you're doing, the more likely you are to learn it and remember it. So when you're just listening to the podcast, you're absolutely learning something. But if you also look at something, that's twice as many senses and it doesn't take twice as much time. So it's really an excellent way to turbocharge your learning capacity without really taking up that much more time, if any. And the last thing that you will get for now as a Vocabit member is priority access to the summer workshops that I'm going to start doing. They are totally virtual and they're going to hit different pain points. The first summer workshop that I'm going to do, just so that you have all of the information, is going to be called The Art of the Essay. And it's going to be about how to really painlessly tackle the essay on the SAT. Because it has so much individualized feedback built in, I'm going to have to cap enrollment, and Vocabit members get priority access to that. But quite frankly, the membership, in my opinion, is worth it alone just for the podcast accompaniment. Everything else is just a really awesome bonus. Vocabit is going to keep growing. I can definitely see adding in some kind of a real-time leaderboard where there are, challenges and competitions and whatever else between the students. I can definitely see doing also, summer giveaways for back to school stuff. And I mean, it's going to be a really fun community. My goal long term is really to see Vocabit up there as a test prep program with Kaplan and Princeton Review. As a thank you to those of you who are on this journey with me from the very beginning, I'd like to add in just a little founding member bonus. The current rate for the Vocabit membership is $9.99 a month or $99 a year. You get 2 months free if you do the annual membership. I'm going to let you founding members lock in that introductory rate for life. The price of this membership is going to go up as the amount of resources I have available increases, but anyone who joins as an annual member between now and May 1st will pay that introductory rate for life. Your price will never go up. I know it's not the same thing as winning the lottery, but it is just a little something that I can do to say thank you to all of you who are here with me from the outset. You can sign up for the Vocabit membership at the new and improved Vocabit website. That's Vocabit spelled VOC, and then Abbott like my last name, ABBETT. And you'll see a little Join Now button on the homepage, and it'll take you exactly where you need to go. And one last thing before we sign off, I think that a pretty common question is going to be, at what age should we start this membership? What age should my child be? And I know that some of you guys in the audience are, just general people looking to improve your vocabulary, and that's amazing. And like I said, honestly, the text addition to the podcast is worth the price of the membership on its own. But if you are preparing for the SAT, if this were my child and I had a high achieving 8th grader, I would enroll in this membership today. No question. It is such a perfect time because their brain is still used to not knowing what every word means. It's still such a well-oiled machine at figuring out, cataloging, and remembering those contextual meanings. And they're old enough to start really resisting and complaining about methods they might not like. 8th graders right now, in my opinion, are also in a little bit of a precarious position because they're going into high school where the standards are a lot higher, but they're going to be out of the swing of things academically because of all of the school closures. So if I had an 8th grader at this point, April 2020, I would get a Vocabit membership just to keep their brain developing, not stressing them out, but to keep them growing. And then obviously, if you have a 9th, 10th, or 11th grader, I would do the same thing. Starting at that 8th or 9th grade window is not too early if you want to make the process really stress-free and just kind of a natural expansion to their existing vocabulary, a continuation of what their brain is already used to, rather than a lot of cramming down the road. So you can get all the details for the Vocabit membership at Vocabit, VOCABBETT.com. I will also put the link in the show notes. I cannot wait to see you there and start this journey with you, and I will be back on Thursday with more vocabulary boosting content.